Hey everybody, today I want to talk about Castlevania, specifically the Castlevania show on Netflix. Season 4 of the show just aired, and it's going to be the last season for the foreseeable future, so I thought I'd go over the whole show and kind of talk about what I think and how I felt about it, give a little kind of review. This isn't really scripted. I just kind of took notes as I was watching the show and figured I'd just talk about it, so I'd sort of try this format out and see if it works and see if I can get a conversation going with myself, which is still very weird. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to talk about the show just overall at first, and I'm going to try to stay non-spoilery. So the first part of this discussion is going to be no spoilers, just overall kind of ideas of how the show went, and then I will I'll put a spoiler warning, and I will talk about each season individually in depth, and I'll talk about everything that happens in the season. So for that part, you're gonna want to have watched the show, but I'll be sure to give you ample warning before I dive into spoilers. So overall, the show is it's really fun to watch. Visually, it's stunning, I think. They really capture the art style of Castlevania, and a lot of the characters are very beautifully drawn, and they're drawn so beautifully that they must be really incredibly hard to animate, and you can actually kind of catch that in some of the animated scenes. It seems like it's they didn't have the hugest budget of all time, but still they do a really good job with what they with the characters they're working with, and with the amount of money that they did have. They do such a good job, and a lot of the action scenes are really well animated and just look really nice. They really come together very cool. I think the show is actually worth watching just for that, just for the fight scenes and stuff like that. If you're an artist or a fan of animation, it's definitely something to take a look at just to appreciate that kind of thing. What also makes it good is it's if you're a fan of the games, or if you're a fan of video games, a lot of the video games, they get translated to movies or get translated to visual media like that. It's not really, they're not good. A lot of video game movies or shows are not great. But this is better than 90% of them, maybe 95% of them. It's not the best thing in the world, but it's of quality. There's quality here. People really tried, and you can see that. I have a lot of gripes and nitpicks about it, but it still was enjoyable to me. I think season 1 is really tight and really well done. There are some gripes in season 1, but for the most part, because it's so short, it's only 4 episodes. It's the pacing is really well done, and it's it feels good. It doesn't feel drawn out. It's decent. When there's an action scene, it's cool to watch, cool to look at. I think season 1 is probably the best put together, and then season 2 is good. At the beginning and the end of season 2 are decent, but then the middle kind of drags a little bit. I think they got a little bit more budget, and Netflix was oh, okay, season 1 did good. We want 10 episodes for season 2, and they were okay, 10. We'll stretch out the 4 we thought we were gonna get and make it 10, or maybe it's 8. But you know what I mean? They got more time, but then they were oh, okay, now we have to kind of stretch this out a little bit more, and you can feel that in season 2. Season 3, you feel it too, and season 4, you feel it a little bit. I think season 4 starts pulling it together though. Season 4 is a bit better paced than seasons 2 and 3. And speaking of season 4, the finale is not bad. It kind of pulls everything together. It doesn't it doesn't crap its pants at the finish line like Game of Thrones does. It ends nicely. It's not a like deep ending or a. It's not an ending that really makes you think too much, but it's fun and it's nice and it's good. You know, it's not a bad ending. So that's a pretty nice thing to have, because you know a bad ending can really ruin a, a decent show. So I feel like the characters in the show are they're fun to watch. They're fun to follow along. Um, this show loosely follows the story of Castlevania 3. And I say loosely because there's really not a lot of story in Castlevania 3. It's a Nintendo game. It follows Trevor Belmont with Sypha Belnadis and Alucard as they seek to um, end Dracula, basically. But they also kind of mix it with the story of Symphony of the Night, which this show takes a lot of influence from Symphony of the Night. A lot. I'll talk about that more when I get into like the spoiler section. But I would say Symphony of the Night, Castlevania 3, and some of the PlayStation 2 Castlevanias, which I really didn't play because they were not my cup of tea, are probably where most of the influence comes from for the show. And it doesn't like follow the story of those things. It's like influenced by the story of the games, but it's its own thing, which I think is kind of good if you're going to make an animated show. Like, it's not, you don't have to follow the game story like 100% because they're games, and the Castlevania games, the stories are not that deep. Maybe Symphony of the Night is one of the deeper ones, and it's, you know, it's just still, you know, very simple. So this is influenced by those things, but it's not following them like completely. If you're a big fan of Grant from Castlevania 3, he's not in the show, so I hope you guys are not too upset by that. But the characters that do make it in, they're pretty fun. I do have some gripes with them. I feel like throughout the entire show, actually, not just the main characters, there's a lot of like a lot of the writing in the show I think is kind of the weaker point of it. And for the characters, like a lot of the times there'll be like this vulgarity to them, which for the characterization of like Trevor in this show, like it fits because that's kind of who he is, but all the other characters kind of start doing it just randomly, and I think it's kind of forced in there for comedic effect, but it doesn't really hit, and it makes the characters kind of too similar, and they kind of use all the characters for comic relief. It kind of feels like that Disney style of doing a show where like there'll be a few minutes and then it's time for a joke, you know, whether or not it really fits. Like there'll be a little story, time for a joke, little story, time for a joke, and sometimes the jokes come when it's like it's not appropriate to have like a joke moment, or it's not appropriate for a character to say something stupid at that particular moment, but they kind of do it anyway for the sake of comedy. It feels really forced, and it kind of started with like Pirates of the Caribbean, like that kind of style, and I don't know. I'm really sick of it, honestly. It's throughout the entire Marvel Cinematic Universe. The DC movies do it now. I'm so sick of it. Like, I like media where like the comedy is natural feeling, you know, like if it's a funny moment just because the moment is funny and it belongs there, or it feels natural. Like the original Star Wars movies, like they have humor in them, but it doesn't feel forced, you know. I don't like the new style of doing it, like where it's just like, now we need a joke, because it kind of breaks the flow of the show. So that's really annoying. So yeah, so the characters will just randomly be like really vulgar, and like I said, for Trevor it fits, but like for Alucard, who is like this, I mean, he's of course he's a different character in the games, but in the show he's similar to that character. He's supposed to be very like proper, and like he's like a noble person, and a noble person wouldn't say fuck off a lot, you know. Um, you know, in the games he doesn't curse at all, and he has this kind of air about him. In the show, he's kind of like it's like a it's like someone pretending to be a noble person, but they're still like cursing like every once in a while and acting like a kid, which they kind of try to explain in the show, but it doesn't really fit. It doesn't really make sense. Other characters will do it too. I'll talk about it more, I guess, when we get to the season by season breakdown. But it's just something that doesn't feel right. Some of the writing. Let's see what else is here in my notes. So the story of Dracula and his wife is compelling. I'll get more into that like when I talk about the show in depth. But Dracula's story is compelling, especially I think in season 1, because it's kind of a fresh take on Dracula. In most series or in most movies or stories about Dracula, he's very clearly a villain, and he's a villainous villain, and he's very bad. But in this, it's kind of like shows his not his. I mean, he doesn't really have much of a good side, but he can be calm, and he can be not murdering people for extended lengths of time, and it kind of like hints at that like he can live a normal life under some specific conditions, and it's kind of interesting. There are some points in the story that like they think they're being deeper. Like they'll be having a conversation, and the conversation doesn't really go anywhere, and it feels like the writer thinks that they're being like super deep, but they're really not. Like they're just not. like I don't know. Maybe it's me, but it feels like they're just trying to be more philosophical than they're coming off as being. And I don't know. It feels forced, kind of. Some of the stuff is interesting that they touch upon, but there's a lot of moments where people are just talking. They're telling a story about themselves or something like that, and I'm like, listen, this is not as interesting as you think it is. Like, this is not compelling. This happens more in the later seasons. Another thing about like this changing seasons in the show is some characters like change between seasons. Like, I feel like this happens the most from season 3 to season 4, where all of a sudden the characters from season 3, they're back, but they feel quite different in season 4. Like they'll be one way at the end of season 3, and then they'll change to a different way in season 4. It feels very odd. I'll talk more about that later. Let's see. Oh, one thing that kind of bugs me about this is the rules of being a vampire are not clear. You know, like in a lot of media, like they kind of set up their vampire rules. Even in Twilight, as stupid as that fucking movie is they set up their vampire rules pretty clearly. Like by the end of it, like, you know, like, all right, what the vampires can do, right? What We Do in the Shadows is a great fucking vampire story, or, you know, even though it's comedy, like their vampire rules are set, and I actually really like them. Like they're really well done. In this show, like, it's not clear. It's like, it's not clear what the benefits of being a vampire are besides you know, immortality. Like it's not clear what the downsides of being a vampire are, because it doesn't really seem like there are any, honestly. The only downside to being a vampire is if you're not a main character vampire, you die real quick. Like, you know. But like, there's no, like, they don't seem bloodlusty. They don't seem like they're in pain when they don't feed. They can apparently like eat regular food, which I thought was a vampire no-no. You know. They drink wine. Like, it's really weird. They can apparently live off of like pig blood and animal blood. which is kind of weird because I always thought Castlevania. I mean, in the games, Castlevania seems to go the more like religious vampire curse kind of thing. Wherein like they can't eat anything and you know, like it's more like strict rules, although they don't really talk about it too seriously in the games. But yeah, I didn't like that. I didn't like that the rules of being a vampire are kind of unclear. Like they take damage, they don't seem to like heal fast. Like they try to stake vampires and stab them in the heart, right? But vampires will get hurt from other things and they don't heal up, or you know, like it's not shown why you have to stake them. It's just like, oh, that's just what you do, like that kind of thing. Holy water works on them and stuff like that. But they don't have a lot of, like, they have physical strengths offensively, but they don't have a lot of defensive physical strength, if that makes any sense. Like in Soul Reaver and Legacy of Kain, like vampires heal, so you have to impale them so they can't heal. You have to set them on fire so they can't heal. Like, it's clear. This doesn't really touch on that too much. And some vampires will die from things that you're like, oh, is he dead? Like, so it's just something I wish was more like set out for you. There's a lot of like, speaking of like vampire weaknesses and the rules, there's a lot of interesting like religious ideas in season 1 specifically. And I love the way season 1 handles religion, its effect on the vampires, the people who are involved in religion, what the main cast like thinks about religion. I love that. And then in the later seasons, it kind of goes kaput. They kind of undo some of the work that they did. And in the later 2 seasons, it's like religion doesn't matter at all. Other than holy water works, but it's never explained like why it works. I thought that was kind of a bummer, because like in season 1, it's like they have really cool ideas, it's interesting, and then they kind of just, you know, like it goes nowhere. Let's see what else. There's a lot of great homages to the games. Like if you're a fan of the Castlevania games, you will like the show a lot more. It's definitely still enjoyable to somebody who just maybe likes vampire stuff or just likes decent action. But if you actually like, if you've played Symphony of the Night, basically, if you played Symphony of the Night or Castlevania 3, you will definitely enjoy this show. There's a lot of homages to the games. There's a lot of little hints and little, like the enemies, the bad guys that show up are bosses and stuff from the games. It's really cool to see them because you're like, oh, it's that boss. That's really cool. There's an enemy called Legion, which is just like a mass of bodies all kind of stuck together, that shows up in season 3, I think, and it's like, oh, it's that boss. Like, it's really cool. Like you don't really see it coming, and then it happens, and you're like, oh, that's awesome, and it's kind of an awesome take on the boss too. So that's really cool. Like if you're a fan of the games, there will be a lot of like, yee! Kind of moments throughout the series that'll keep you really happy. One thing that you won't be seeing a lot of if you're a fan of the games is Castlevania itself. The games are all about this crazy castle and all the different rooms in it, and like Symphony of the Night has, like, Castlevania is amazing. Like it's beautiful, and it has all these, it's huge, and it's like sprawling, and every area of the castle has different things in it. Like the courtyards are different, and then there's the library, and then there's like the underneath the castle with like the waterways and all different enemies. In the show, they don't spend a lot of time in Castlevania itself. Like it is there, it's always like in the back, you know, in the background. But I think honestly, besides like season 2, it doesn't play a big role itself, you know, like it's not a big character itself, which is a shame because Castlevania is awesome, and the designs throughout the different games have been really cool, and it'd be cool to explore that in the series. I think one of the things that really bugs me is the main characters on both sides, like the good guys and the bad guys. They start getting dumb. Season 1, everything's pretty good. Season 2, some of the bad guys get dumb. And then in Season 3, like, the main cast gets really dumb. Like, really, really dumb in Season 3. In Season 3, everybody is fucking stupid. And it really bothers me. It really bothers me when I feel smarter than, like, a vampire hunter or a wizard. You know? Like, it's okay if I find out things or if I figure out things faster than the characters because I'm omniscient, because I'm watching the show. But, like, if I have a solution to a problem that the characters don't do, I feel like the show is being stupid, and the characters are being stupid, and the writing is bad. I'm going to talk more about that specifically when I get to those specific points in the seasons, but it is a problem, I think. In it starts in Season 2 with the bad guys, and then Season 3 and 4 it's everybody. It just gets really dumb, and for stuff to happen, like, they have to be dumb, you know, that kind of thing. So that's pretty much it for the non-spoilery part. It's a good show. Like, I have a lot of gripes because I want it to be better, but for what it is, it's good. It's fun to watch. The animation pulls you along. The character designs are fucking fantastic. To look at it is great. It's a lot of fun, and you can see they get, like, more budget in the later seasons, so things look really, really nice. In the later seasons, there's action scenes that you're really gonna want to like go frame by frame and just be like, oh, and then this happens. It's awesome for that. And, like, the parts that are bad, like, they're nowhere near like for example, like Game of Thrones season 8 bad. Like, it's not like that. All my criticisms are just like, this could have been better. It's not like this is shit, like, you know, like that kind of thing. So overall the series is enjoyable. It's good to watch. It's a good, like, vampire show. It's one of the better video game adaptations, and definitely, like, check it out. Like, if you're a fan of the games, check it out. If you're a fan of, you know, just decent vampire stuff, check it out. So now I'm going to get into spoiler territory. So please stop watching this now and go watch the series if you don't want to be spoiled, and then you can come back and we can talk more about what's going on. Alright, so let's get in depth on Castlevania Season 1. So this season is probably one of the better ones. I think because it's very short and concise, and it gets straight to the points it's trying to make, without a lot of filler and meandering. So it starts out, and there's a woman standing in what looks to be like a deserty kind of thing with impaled people strewn about, and there's this huge Castlevania in front of her. So once again, like, Dracula is being sort of mixed, or Dracula's lore in this is being mixed with Vlad the Impaler, which is cool. So this is Lisa, and she's from a very small town. She wants to become a doctor and help people, and she's seeking out Dracula because it is rumored that he has this wealth of knowledge and is a man of science. And she kind of ignores the fact that he's also a huge murderer and like a genocidal monster, you know. So she just goes straight up to the castle and knocks on the door, where she meets Dracula. Dracula's more like, not curious, but he doesn't immediately murder her, and he kind of falls for her because she's, like, very strong-willed and very determined to reach her goal. and she's not intimidated by him. One thing about Dracula 2 in the series that I love is he's humongous. Like in the Castlevania games, he's always bigger than the player character is. Like he's a few feet. He's like 6 feet above. Like he's like twice the size of the player character's sprite in the games. And in this show, he's huge. He's like 10 feet tall. Some scenes he doesn't come across that big, but like in some scenes he comes across as huge, which I like. So Lisa, he tends to fall for Lisa's bravery and her stubbornness, and she kind of hints at being able to like turn him to being more of a calm, turning him away from the violent life. And she tells him he should explore the world and get reintroduced to humans and stuff like that. So they apparently live together. They leave Castlevainia behind. Lisa lives in a small house, I guess, outside her village. And Dracula has like gone to travel the world as a man. Lisa is now an accomplished doctor, it seems, although we really don't see much of her doctoring, at least not in this season. But that has gotten her the attention of the church, who under a single bishop has branded her as a witch. So they come and take Lisa while Dracula is away, and they burn down her house. And this basically is the catalyst for the story. Like, this sets off the story. We see Lisa in a town square. She's being burned at the stake, and she's like basically begging for Dracula to not enact his revenge, to leave the humans alone. They don't understand what they're doing. The bishop is kind of just talking about his work and how he wishes he could do more. Very, very evil, very standard evil guy posing as a good guy stuff. Kind of think Frollo from Hunchback of Notre Dame. So Dracula returns home. He finds one of Lisa's patients kind of paying her respects at the house. He asks what's going on, and he finds out that his wife has been murdered. Like, it's already been carried out. So he teleports. He creates that pillar of fire that he has in the games, which is awesome. And he shows up to where Lisa is, and basically threatens everybody there. And the people, although they are quite terrified by what they're seeing, they don't seem to take it to heart. A weird thing is, instead of going insane right at the moment and attacking the people there, he gives them a year. He's I think he even tells them he's giving them a chance to get out of Targovishta, which is the city that Lisa was burned at. It's very weird. It's you're following the story and the emotions it's portraying to that point, and then he's like, all right, I'm gonna kick your asses in a year, bye. And you're like, what? Shouldn't you be on an emotional rampage right now? I don't understand why he gives them a year of respite. Even the bad people, I could see him killing the people responsible directly, and then telling the citizenry, get out of here. I'm gonna lay this land low. But he gives that same chance to everybody, which is very odd and very kind of off-putting. The reason the show gives is that he has to gather an army over the course of a year, which I don't buy. He's a big, powerful vampire. He could have done some destruction. He could have gathered the army for the further destruction of the city. But he could have done something at that moment. You think it would be natural that he would have done something at that moment. Like, it's very odd that he doesn't. Another thing is we have a scene where Alucard, Dracula's son, is a full-grown man, and he's telling his father to stop and not to go through with this genocide. This also is kind of off-putting because it's like, where was Alucard when his mother was being taken? Why didn't he stop it? Like, it doesn't make sense. Like, they could have played this off two ways. They could have had Alucard be a child when it happens, so he can't really fend off the attackers, or he could be there as an adult, or he could come before they're about to burn her. He could show up in the town square, like, intent on rescuing her, and she could know that, like, he's not going to be able to do it without killing people, and she could stop him. Ugh. Ooh, excuse me. I think that would have been way better, way more powerful than kind of hinting at Alucard, or kind of, like, it would have been more powerful than what they did. It just seems like in the execution, like, Dracula and Alucard don't seem to care that much, right? Like, they have a fight and Alucard is injured and he's knocked out for conveniently a year, which is, it's fine. But, like, it just, both of the characters don't seem like they're reacting as emotionally to Lisa's death as they should be. Like, in the games, like, this is one of the more powerful driving moments or driving forces behind what Alucard does. In the show, he just doesn't, like, he says he does everything for his mother, but, like, you don't see his passionate response to her death, in the games also, he hears her last words, which are intended for both him and Dracula, and it's kind of a powerful moment in Symphony of the Night, and in this he's not there. So there's a lot of, like, good drama that you miss out on just from their decision to not have Alucard be there. So then a year passes, and Targovishta is, like, celebrating that they haven't been destroyed, even though it's the day of when Dracula said he would destroy them. It's just like an odd scene. And then the destruction of Targovishta begins. The sky turns dark. Blood starts to rain out of the sky. With the blood, there's, like, these, like, weird embryo-looking nightmare creatures. And then these hellish-looking demons fall on the city. It's very violent. It looks very grand. It's a very awesome scene. It's threatening. It's cool. Very kind of gothic rock, like, album covery looking violence. It's a great scene. Lots of, like, it looks horrible. Like, it looks very disturbing, which you would want from an attack from from Dracula. It makes Dracula seem really powerful and threatening. It makes the hordes of monsters look really powerful and threatening. The monsters themselves have a very distinct, like, Castlevainia kind of look to them. It's good. It's the destruction of Targovishta is just a very good scene. And then Dracula basically tells the monsters, like, all right, we'll go out into the countryside and start eradicating the people. And then we cut to one of the most poorly written, like, I'm adjusting the mic because I want you guys to hear me. This is the most poorly written conversation I've ever heard anywhere. It's two farmers talking about how one of them caught a man having sex with his goat, and this shit goes on for, like, 3 minutes, if not more. It's really stupid. I think it's supposed to be funny. It's not funny. It's very dumb. It's like, I feel like it doesn't belong with what the rest of the series had presented. And this serves as the introduction of one of our main characters, Trevor Belmont. He just on the dialogue with the farmer, like it's dumb. It's not funny. It makes it seem like poor people are all stupid, inbred people, you know, like all, you know, like it's very stereotypical and just really dumb. I'm gonna stop finding different ways to call it stupid now. All right, so then we meet Trevor Belmont. He is apparently a wandering drunk, and he's in this bar, and he in starting a fight with these two well-written farmers. We find out he was excommunicated from the church, and his lands were destroyed, and his family was destroyed, and he's basically the last one, and he's, for more or less, he's just poor and wandering around and drowning his sorrows in alcohol. Trevor finds himself at one of the outer lying cities by Targovishta, and he runs into this group of speakers, which are historians that just kind of learn all the stories as they travel and speak them to each other and to other people, passing on the history. So it's all like spoken word history. And he finds out that one of them is missing. One of them went searching for a soldier, which is a legend from that area, under the town of Greshit, which is where they are. So this speaker disappeared based on this story that they've heard, and the other speakers won't leave, even though they're kind of being blamed for the destruction of the town by the local bishop, which is, surprise, surprise, the same bishop that had destroyed Dracula's wife. Trevor reluctantly agrees to go find this speaker. He does find her eventually. She turns out to be a woman who travels as a man for safety. It's Sypha, one of the characters from Castlevainia 3, and she is a magician, an extremely powerful, almost kind of unbeatable in the story magician with no discernible weaknesses whatsoever. Even though when he finds her, she's been turned to stone by a Cyclops. So Trevor saves Sypha by defeating the Cyclops, which turns her back into flesh and blood. They don't find the sleeping soldier, but instead they return to the group of speakers. And once again, the lesson of the season is hammered into our heads. The first time is Dracula, when he's speaking to Alucard, he says, like, one of the people who had been at the burning of his wife could have said, no, we won't act like animals, you know, we're not going to burn this woman who's innocent. And then here again, basically they say that for evil to prevail, good men must do nothing. After a short speech, Trevor decides to defend the speakers and the town when the demons come and attack. And one of the scenes that happens while the demons are attacking is they enter the church and they speak to the bishop. And I love this scene. It's basically a huge demon with a bunch of other little like minion demons confronting the bishop who started all this, and basically telling him that, you know, he's the reason they're there. God doesn't love what he does. Like the specific line is, the bishop's line of work makes God puke. Like, you know, it's just like throwing in the bishop's face that he's an evil man, and these demons have come for him, and God isn't going to help him because he's an evil man. And I don't know. I think it's great. I think it's like one of the more like powerful scenes in the show. There's a lot of hints that like just because you're a church man doesn't make you a holy man, you know. And I think it's really cool and one of the better kind of little themes of the show. But it's going to be dropped in some of the later seasons. Like, it's not going to be a theme that you can shroud yourself with. You know, in Divinity, pretend to be this holy figure and then actually be a terrible person, which I think is a great thing to kind of hit upon, you know, and talk about. But it's just going to be dropped. There's actually another scene in the attack on Greshit where they're preparing weapons to use against the demons, and there's just like this unassuming priest, and Trevor's like, can you bless like the water, like the buckets of water, so we can use them against the demons? And the priest does it, and it actually works as holy water and hurts the demons. And Trevor's like, oh, that you know, that simple priest, that simple town priest could actually make holy water. This hints that, like, oh, maybe the town priest is a good person, so God has his back. You know, like, I like that kind of juxtaposition and that little bit of storytelling. And this is the end of it, which is really disappointing. And they actually go against that in season 2, which I'll talk about when we get to that. So anyway, right before the demon attack, Trevor's being chased by the church people, who are like hired thugs, basically. And they chase him through the town, and there's like a big group of people who've been chasing Trevor, and they... Basically, Trevor makes a speech, right, about how the church is corrupt and these priests are actually thugs, and they're gonna turn the townspeople into murderers, right? And it's, you know, he's basically, oh, this doing very evil things. The priesthood here is doing very evil things, and they were gonna make you do their dirty work. And he says this to the group of townspeople, and he ends up convincing, I don't, like, maybe not on purpose, but the townspeople immediately, like, attack and kill one of the priests. And I was like, isn't that what you were telling them not to do, is not become a group of murderers? And they immediately, like, murdered this guy. Like, it's really weird. Like, it's not, doesn't follow what, like, the point of what they were just saying, like, to not do this violence. Like, instead of doing violence against the speakers, they do violence against these people, and they fuck the guy up. I don't know, I just thought it was really odd, a very odd scene. Like, you would have made these people murderers, and then the townspeople were like, let's murder him. Like, it's really weird. So then the demons attack. It's kind of cool, and, you know, interesting scene. Sypha uses her magic, which already starts to seem a little kind of powerful. Although it's not bad in this season. It's not, like, overwhelming. They end up in the catacombs under the city, which are huge, and it's like you know, Dragon Ball Z, when they have those huge open areas that wouldn't possibly exist in real life. Like, there's this huge, like there's like a clock tower and a huge abyss under the town, which doesn't make any sense, but it's there. Like, it doesn't make any sense that this town hasn't, like, just fallen into the earth and just been swallowed up by a sinkhole with this huge area underneath it. And long story short, Sypha and Trevor run into Alucard's coffin, and after a short little fight between Trevor and Alucard, they decide to team up against Dracula. And that's basically the end of season 1. We have our heroes established, and they're going to fight Dracula and defeat him in the next season and stop his slaughter of innocents. So that's season 1, basically. It's a good season. It's definitely something that'll get you hooked. It's an interesting show. Like, the setup, the premise is good. There's just, like, a few scenes that seem out of place, or, like, they don't seem to, like, fit right, or the characters do a few things where you're like, I'm not sure if that's how a normal thinking thing would react. But, like, the flaws are very few, and it's a good show. It's interesting, and it keeps you moving. Like, every new scene is, like, moving along. There's no, you don't feel like you're being strung along for too long, or it doesn't feel drawn out. It's a very short, concise season, which I think worked well for it. And I think that in later seasons, it's the fact that there are more episodes kind of work against the later seasons. So all right, let's move on and talk about season 2 now. Okay, so as season 2 begins, we see Lisa actually doing some doctoring. She's in her small home practicing medicine. Alucard is not there for whatever reason, but the woman who was laying flowers at this burnt down home is there, and she's got some kind of medical condition. I think it's like just upset stomach or some shit like that. So we see like there's some kind of like sciencey apparatuses that Lisa has taken from Dracula's castle. She's got books and books on all these different medical conditions and ways to treat them, and it's kind of cool. It's like you see like what Dracula has contributed to her being a doctor, and she's doing a good job. Then the bishop shows up and he's like, "Take this witch, burn the house down," and that's it. That's the end of the scene. It's not. I mean, we're just getting like a kind of a recap, like another glimpse into like Lisa's life, or the woman who was taken that set this all off. So it's fine. Then we cut to Dracula, just basically being depressed, and there's a big change in tone from last season to this season in Dracula. Like this season focuses more on him just being very depressed, where in the first season you just kind of see his rage. And I'm not saying it doesn't make sense for that to happen, but it just happens very, I mean, it's between seasons, but it happens very suddenly in terms of the story. He's a lot less energetic, a lot less like determined to destroy or to get revenge. Perhaps because a year went by. But even then, like in the destruction of Targovishta, like he's very involved. He's commanding his troops, and that will be the last time he ever commands his troops. Now there are other characters who are doing like the running of his army. Hector and Isaac are introduced. They're characters from one of the PS2 Castlevainia games. I didn't play those games, so I don't know what the characters are like in the games, but they're very different from in the show. Hector and Isaac are forge masters. They are the ones who create the armies of hell, which is kind of odd. I thought maybe Dracula was just kind of pulling creatures from hell using spells or some kind of magic. But no, apparently these two guys are making them using dead bodies, which is a little weird. And these two gentlemen who are human, they control the creatures that they make. It's just weird. Like it's fine that these two guys exist. I think it's odd that like the vast menagerie of Dracula's army is created and commanded by these two human guys. Like I find that odd. You would think Dracula would have more of a more power in gathering an army of demons than none at all. So that's a little lame. We're also introduced to the vampire generals, mostly just Godbrand and Carmilla. Godbrand is, as far as I know, not a character from any of the games. Carmilla is a classic vampire and Castlevania enemy, although in most of the games she's just like a big face. And in this she's an actual character. Now, Godbrand is going to take up the role of being very stupid and having bad dialogue that was previously taken up by the two farmers in season 1. He basically just complains the whole time, doesn't contribute much of anything, and is going to be... Well, he contributes to the slow pacing that this season is going to have throughout. He just kind of wastes time, and he talks about being a vampire and killing stuff and having sex, and that's what he talks about, and none of it's really any compelling, and he's just there. And he's lame, and he gets killed later on, and no one cares. It's like they start introducing a bunch of characters in this season, and a lot of them are just like, why is this character here? Like, one thing that is nice about this season is there are a lot of like little homages to the games. The main characters, Trevor, Cypher, and Alucard, are looking for a way to track down Castlevania because it's like a magical moving castle. So Trevor decides to take them back to his family home, where underneath is the like collected knowledge of all the Belmont vampire hunters, and it's in the backgrounds. There's just tons of little nods to the Castlevania games and homages to the games, and it's really cool. And stuff like that is littered throughout this season. So once again, Castlevania like moves around. Like, you have to kind of track it down, and that's how they're like conducting this war with this moving castle. The device that moves the castle is it looks a lot like the save. Like in Symphony of the Night, there were these save stations that they were like these hexagonal, I guess, orbs. That would turn into a coffin that Alucard would sleep in, and one of those orbs is is the device that moves the castle around, which is kind of cool. So we start following the main characters as they travel the roads. They get attacked. There's a very cool fight scene. The banter between the main characters is enjoyable. I don't think of some of Alucard's lines really suit him. He's like, they don't suit the video game Alucard. In this, he's kind of like a bratty, snobby teenager, which that becomes part of the lore, is that like Alucard aged very fast, which I think is very lame. You know, it's, I don't know, it's just kind of weird. You'd think, being half vampire, he would either age slowly or I don't know. It just seems odd. It's not bad, it's just weird to me. So then we go back to Castlevania, and like, it's just vampire drama, but not interesting vampire drama. The generals are arguing amongst themselves, and they don't like that there's no real like direction for the war. Which is, I don't know. Like, it seemed like in the first season, Dracula was very determined and was leading his army, and basically it was just genocide that he wanted. And now they're like, oh, well, how do we do this? It's like, just walk in every direction and kill shit. Like, what do you eat shit? Like, you would think vampires would be more like bloodlust monster, or would at least have that part in them. But now they're just like whining, and they're like, oh, this doesn't make any sense. I mean, which I guess is sort of realistic, if you want to make that argument, but it's also boring, and it doesn't make for an interesting series. Carmilla, the vampire, like, insults Dracula to his face in front of all his generals, and he just kind of like weirdly ignores it. Like, he's just like, well, why did you do that? Like, and she gives him like this terrible like excuse. It's really a weird scene. All the stuff with the vampires in this season it's kind of lame and awful. There's another scene later on where Godbrand like asks a very like reasonable question of Dracula, and Dracula threatens to murder him. Like, like it doesn't make sense. It's like, why does Carmilla get away with something far worse? Like, she's like, well, how come you didn't turn your wife and I think she calls her like a pet. And then Godbrand's like, well, what are we doing with the war? And Dracula fucking loses it on him. I think it's mostly just to like, yeah, Carmilla's a strong, powerful woman, and this Godbrand guy's an idiot. It's like I think that's the reason for the different tones, but it doesn't make sense for like the character that Dracula is, that he wouldn't kill Carmilla and then like blow Godbrand off. I don't know. It's just weird. Like the Dracula side of the story in this season becomes fucking lame for most of the season. There's a lot of like bitching and shit between the vampires. It's odd. Again, like in this season, a lot of the vampire lore is very odd. Like they don't seem to heal. You can kill them pretty easily. Like I think Godbrand is killed with he's like choked with a whip and beaten with a whip, and he dies. Like he just gets beat up and he dies. And it's like, what? Like he's a vampire. Like first of all, how is he like overpowered? And second of all, like he's dead. Like I don't know. It's very, very odd. Hector, one of the two Forge Masters, gets really easily and very, very obviously like manipulated by Carmilla, and that works, and his character immediately becomes very lame. Once again, like the demons are made by these two Forge Master guys. They're not from hell, which you would think would be kind of more intimidating. I don't know. The whole reason for this like oddness or this war not being conducted very well is apparently it's supposed to be a big suicide by Dracula. He like feels dead inside, and he's just looking for closure and to basically bring about his own death, which I guess as a I don't know, a theme or an idea is a good idea, but I feel like the execution is not. It just doesn't make any sense, and it doesn't match up with what happened in the first season. A lot of the motivations are all over the place. Dracula doesn't care about anything, but like he wants everybody dead, like, and he's like quick to anger with certain vampires, but then he's like with other vampires. Like it's really weird. He has some like conversations with the Forge Masters that are what will become like a trend. Like they're not as deep as like they feel like they like the writers think they're deeper than they are. And another thing that happens in the season that really bugs me is the priest's body from the first season, the bishop, is brought to the castle to be made into a monster, and Hector revives him, but just as the priest. He doesn't make him into a monster, which I wasn't sure that could be done, but it can be apparently. And then he brings this undead priest to a river, this undead bishop who was evil in life and who God had basically abandoned, according to the demon that killed him. This evil undead priest blesses the water around the city that the castle ends up in, and it works, and the river becomes blessed, and a lot of vampires are killed in it. Like it's part of the scheme by Carmilla to betray Dracula and take over, I guess, the castle. And it's like it throws out the lessons from the first season, where like, you know, like in order for God to have you back, you have to be a good person. Apparently you can be undead and have been evil in life, and God will still give you the power to make holy water. Like it's really stupid. Later on in future seasons, they're gonna like toss out the idea that God even exists. Like, but it doesn't make sense, because like why would holy water work? It's very like they say like religion is just like beliefs. It's not actually based on anything, and I'll talk about it more later. But the change in direction is dumb for what Castlevania is, in my opinion. So anyway, Sypha finds a way to summon Castlevania to her, so that her and the other main characters can storm the castle and find Dracula and kill him. This scene is very cool. Her trying to drag Castlevania, and it kind of like the teleportation device malfunctioning, and the castle ending up in all these other places and getting dragged towards where the main characters are. That scene's really cool. The there's an attack on the Belmont Stronghold, which is really cool. Trevor finds the Morning Star whip, which is also like a nod to the games, and it's awesome. Like what the whip does to unholy creatures is kind of cool. Like basically, it makes an explosion. It's cool. Like there's a lot of like all the fights and nods to the games. They're all really well done, and they're really cool. There's a great scene where finally, when the castle is there, the main characters basically storm the castle. Bloody Tears plays, which is a classic Castlevania OST. And it's not the most powerful version of Bloody Tears, but it is there. And it's a really cool scene with the three main characters fighting a bunch of vampires. It's awesome. It's just really well animated, well thought out. There's a lot of like clever uses of different powers and abilities. It's cool. We start to see Sypha's like unbelievable combat abilities start to show, where it's like, oh, she can't really be defeated because she can just basically do anything with magic, you know. Not it's all elemental, but it's like really like overpowered, and it's like maybe this character doesn't really ever seem to be under any sort of threat when they're fighting, you know. Whereas like usually when you're a magician, like in D&D and stuff like that, like you're kind of weaker physically, so you kind of have to watch the other characters in the group have to watch the magician in order to protect them so that they can work their powerful magic. There's no indication of that in this story. It's just like she's really super amazing. I don't mind like the girl character being super powerful, but like it takes away some of the tension in the scenes that she's in, or the scenes that she's fighting. That's all. Alucard also seems very powerful by comparison, but there'll be parts in fights where he seems like he's getting overwhelmed or has like a weakness, or he gets blindsided, you know? And Trevor is fine. He seems like a normal human man for the most part, with extraordinary abilities in fighting, and some magic items fighting. And like he's good, he's killing people, he's taking things out, but he's putting a lot of effort into it, and like he's taking hits. So like that, I feel like those are like that's cool. Like those two are cool, but like I feel like Sypha is like a little overpowered. It's not bad. It's just a thing that irks me. It's like a nitpick. So finally we get to Dracula versus the main cast, and the Dracula fight scene is also really good. We find out that Alucard grew up in the castle. Like, he grew up in Castlevania, which I find to be really weird. I feel like if Lisa was trying to get Dracula to live a normal life, that he would have lived with her in her small cottage when they were raising a child, and that Alucard would have grown up in the small cottage, not in the castle. It's really weird, you know. Alucard has like a room with like toys and stuff in it. Anyway. So they fight Dracula. Dracula's death scene is actually pretty emotional. It is like it does end up coming down to like Dracula and Alucard, and it is kind of a father-son moment, and it's got its beats. it's good. Like it is really good. Uh, you can see Alucard like wants to kill his father, but also has regrets. And Dracula kind of is winning the fight, and then he realizes he's killing his son, and he's regretful. And he's just like, oh, like I've made a mistake, you know. And then he's staked, and then the other two main characters like brutally like take off his head and burn him. And you can see like Alucard's face. He's horrified. It's like, oh god, like you know, that was done really well, I think. There's another thing that happens in this is Carmilla basically takes Hector prisoner. Their coup d'état fails. And Carmilla decides to take the Forge Master for herself because he can make these demons. And then she has to sleep because it's daytime, and Hector just kind of stays and waits for her to wake up. Even like he hasn't been taken prisoner officially yet, but like he knows she betrayed him and manipulated him at this point, and he just kind of hangs around and waits for her to wake up, where she immediately officially takes him prisoner. And I was just like, what the fuck is this? Like, this is stupid as hell. And this character's a dope. I don't know, this scene just I don't know, it just made Hector lame. And I don't know, I thought it was dumb. I also have a note here that people are evil for no reason in this season. I don't know where this note came from. Like, I can't remember because there was so much time between my original recording of the summary and this. But I do remember that in this series, there are a lot of characters who are just like douchebags for not a lot of, like, they just are, you know, like they're just like malicious for no particular reason. This isn't necessarily untrue to life, but just it's not depicted very. Like when every character is that way in the series, it's like, all right, like this is a little too much. Like the world is a dark place, but it's not that crazy. Like not everybody is a psychopath or a sociopath. Like Isaac gets transported to a random place by Dracula, and the first people he runs into like try to take him as a slave and beat him or kill him. And it's like, really? Like the first people that he are even hinted at being here are like just awful, like just the worst kind of people in the world. Like, what are the odds? There's a few like scenes like that where it's like, really? Like, come on. Oh, one thing I forgot. This is placed wrong in my summary, but there's a scene where Dracula is remembering, where he's saying like he's not like he used to be anymore. And there's a flashback, and you think it's going to be a flashback of like him putting up all the people on stakes and stuff like that, like maybe in his heyday of being like a warlord or something like that. But it's just him attacking like a small village, and the reason given for him attacking the village is really like weird and lame, and he's like attacking like a merchant guild, and he does like put them on pikes and everything, but it's like, oh, this is the horrible Dracula. It's like it's very like misses the tone, I think. And I think it would have been way better to show him as like a general, just slaughtering tons of people in like on like a battlefield or something like that, showing the war-driven like murdering genocidal monster Dracula. Instead, it's just like this weird town where he kills a few people, he lets the women and children go. It's like, you're not showing me genocidal monster here. Like, it's another scene where like this, the tone is just completely off. So that's basically all of season 2. It has an okay start, a very long, like poorly paced, I feel, middle, and a decent ending. But there's just so much like weight, not weight, like fluff in the season. Like so much of it just dragging on, and the pacing not really being well done, and the characters' motivations not being clear, and just like the weird vampire like drama that didn't really seem to make any sense. Yeah, there's a lot of issues in season 2 kind of dragging it down, but for the most part it ends well, and it's enjoyable to watch the main characters interact, and the father and son thing between Dracula and Alucard. Yeah, they kind of bring it up. Alright, so that's it for season 2. Let's talk about season 3. Okay, so season 3 of Castlevania has a very bad case of something I like to call the worst, because it is awful. Alright, so it starts out and Alucard is slowly losing his mind. We find out that he's eating. Apparently the half Dracula or the half vampire needs to eat. And I think in the games, I think he spends most of his time just kind of asleep. I don't know, it's very odd. Also, he's living at Castlevania. He's been bequeathed the Belmont stronghold where Castlevania is, and he's kind of living Castlevania and protecting the stronghold at the same time. There's a little bit of like comedy, or attempts at comedy, I guess, with Alucard. He's having a very rough time being alone, which is odd, because isn't he always alone? Like, he's just had those 2 other friends for like a week, where most of his life it's been like him, I think, by himself. Like, he had his mother, which he was close to, and then she died, but she's been dead for a year, and he wasn't with her when she died. Like, it feels like Dracula should be, or it feels like Alucard should be used to being alone. But he's having like this scene where it's like, oh, he's going nuts, and it's like, I don't think he'd be going nuts. I think he'd be fine, or at least used to it. So then we cut to Carmilla, and she's taking Hector back to her lady vampire posse. The lady vampires are introduced. They're pretty good. So there's Lenore, who's like the diplomat of the group. There's Striga, who is the warlord, and then there's Morana, who's basically the accountant and like the person who keeps things tidy, I guess, or makes the plans. And that's kind of cool. Like, they make a nice vampire council. They're intimidating, right? Seems like together they would be a force to be reckoned with. Anyway, so then we also meet, we follow Sypha and Trevor to a little town where they meet Saint Germain, who is obviously not trustworthy. There's also a judge in the town who's like the town mayor, who we'll talk about more later. When they arrive at the town, they're like dragging behind a monster just to prove that they can kill night creatures. And there's like a weird little interaction where this guy wants the monster's teeth, and Trevor's like, oh, like Sypha's like weirded out, and Trevor's like, oh yeah, no problem, but 4 coins for each tooth or some shit like that. I like this moment a lot because it I think this is kind of a good lore building moment, and also like this kind of stuff happens in real life. Like, you know, like if a tiger is killed, people will be like, oh, the teeth will make you strong, or the fur is good for you, you know, that kind of thing. And this is like a little hint of that in this interaction, which I think is cool. Then Trevor buys a beer And there's a forced joke where Trevor says that beer is better than sex, and then Sypha gets huffy about it. And it's stupid because it's incredibly forced and doesn't feel natural. Like, there are moments where the two characters' banter is fun, but this part just seemed, I don't know. Like, Sypha's getting, like, really upset for just, like, a side comment, and it's like, it kind of, I don't know, it makes her character, like, more silly than I feel like she should be. So then we cut back to the girl vampire squad, who make plans to capture humans and feed on them, like in like like they want to carve out a big piece of land and keep like basically a human farm on there so they can basically exist for all time. Awesome. Aren't you guys doing that already? Like, the fact that you all four exist in this spot with no body trying to attack you or kill you or no vampire hunters, like, you're good, aren't you? Like, why? Like, what are you... What's the plan here? Like, what are we going to change? Like, how is life going to get better where you guys seem to be rich and powerful and uncontested here? Like, I don't know. The plan they come up with just doesn't seem to make sense. But they're all, like, super gung-ho about it. They're like, yeah, this is going to be amazing. And I'm like, like, if this is so great and so easy, like, why haven't you done it? Like, they say it's like, oh, a lot of the vampire leaders were killed at Dracula's castle, but it's like, I don't know. I'm just not convinced that their life would change for the better. It seems like they already kind of have it perfect already. We go back to, like, we're going to be going back between these two focuses of the story. So we go back to Sypha and Trevor, and now they seem like a lot of their conversations seem a bit more dumb now, which is a big problem I have with this season, is all the characters become stupid, like way stupider, so that things can happen. Like, Sypha, she wants to leave the town that they're in, even though there's clearly some shit going on. Like, apparently a creature crashed into the church. Everybody at the church is acting nuts. There's, like, weird shit going on, and she's like, oh, let's leave. And I'm like, what? What? Like, I don't know. There's a lot of, like, stupid shit going on. Like, once again, that monster, like, lands in the church, and the judge, like the leader of the town, didn't search the church. Like, they just some people brought out some chunks of monster, and they were like, oh, that must mean it's dead. Like, he didn't go in and make sure the thing is dead, burn it, crucify it, whatever. It's really it's dumb. We also move to Isaac, who has probably the most interesting story in this season. He is traveling along. He's basically making monsters as he goes, and he's trying to get back to get his revenge on Hector for betraying Dracula. And he's kind of like meeting people along the way, having these somewhat interesting conversations with like shops people and stuff like that. But he too, like, comes off as stupid because he's moving through, like, these towns or these cities, and he's got, like, a host of demons behind him, and the people in the cities are getting upset and, like, attacking them, and he's like, why won't anybody leave me alone? It's like, dude, it's the monsters. Like, leave the monsters somewhere else and just walk through the city. You'll be fine. You can't drag this army of monsters and be like, we are coming in peace and we're leaving in peace. Like, I don't know. He's a little stupid too, along with the other characters from this fucking story. So we also, the vampire Lenore, the diplomat, tries to make friends with Hector so that he can be manipulated some more. And because he's an idiot, he allows this to happen. We see that vampires can eat regular food, which what the fuck? Like, isn't that a hardcore vampire no-no that they can't eat food? That like it's either it tastes like ash in their mouths, or they like their body rejects it like it's poison, or they just can't taste it. Like in this story, like vampires can just kind of eat like wine, drink wine, and eat cupcakes, no problem, without any negative side effects. And she's like, oh, we need blood to live, but we can still enjoy the finer things in life. And it's like, isn't being a vampire a curse? Aren't there downsides to being fucking undead? Like, it's so lame. It's so, like, I was complaining before, like the vampire rules aren't laid out. Now some of them are being laid out, and it's like they're awful. Like you can just go on and have chicken cutlets and French fries as a vampire. It's just very dumb. Also, Hector is another idiot. He just goes along with what Lenore is saying. He tries to like threaten her. Like, he grabs her throat and he's like, I'm gonna rip your throat out. And it's like, dude, she's a vampire, man. Like, I don't know, I guess in this story that would work, but you're gonna rip her throat out with your hand? Like, it's, I don't know, this is very dumb. And as the series go on, like the lady vampires, like the girl vampire squad, like, they're just lame. They don't do anything. They talk a lot. Lenore is the only one really doing things, and she's manipulating Hector, who's like super easy to manipulate, and he's super dumb, and it's not interesting. She does have like a like, she comes off as sweet and nice, I guess. Not really, but like, she's putting that off, or the show is trying to tell you she's that way. But then she reveals that she does have a tough vampire side who will murder you, and then this season is the last we'll ever hear of that tough vampire side, which we'll talk about more during season 4. But it's I don't know, it's just dumb. Just, the lady vampires are not like, you when you meet them, you're like, oh, this is gonna be awesome, and then they proceed to do nothing. Like, they get nothing done, and it's really lame. Yeah, so then back in the town, like, Trevor and what's her name, Cypher, are investigating the strange occurrences in the town that Cypher wanted to leave. And they go and talk to the priests, and the priests have like knives, and they have they have like the symbol for hell branded on them. And the main characters just like have a conversation, and they just fucking walk away, and they don't do anything. Like, it's so stupid. It's like, clearly something is wrong. You have a magician who like took out 4 vampires on her own, and like held off groups of people in season 1, and you don't just assault the church and find out what's going on. Like, these people are walking around with like the symbol of hell on them, and you guys are just like, something's fishy's going on, but I'm not sure what. Like the main characters, they find runes carved into like wood around the city, and they're like, that's weird. Like, that's very suspicious. And then they don't do anything to the runes. They just leave them. And I'm losing my fucking mind. I'm like, all right, we'll take a knife and like cross it out, or cut it off, or burn it off, or scratch it out, do something. Like, undo their fucking, whoever's doing this, undo their work, because it's obviously bad. But the main characters, they look at it, they have a conversation about it, and then they walk away. And it's the stupidest fucking shit. Like, the main characters in this season, like, they become so stupid. Like, they're so dumb. Also, one thing that I haven't been like talking about is Alucard is approached by these 2 other characters, these 2 siblings. They're twins, and they're like, oh, we come from this place where this vampire lady like kept us as slaves. And he's like, a little bit suspicious of them, but like he takes them in as like and promises to train them to be better vampire hunters. And they just like act very suspicious, and like it's really weird. And then Alucard is just becomes very vulnerable to them, I guess is the word. I don't know. He becomes very cozy with them very quickly, and he wasn't even that cozy with Sypha and Trevor. I don't know. It just has the feeling of like, oh, he's dumb too now. You know? Okay. I guess all the characters are stupid. I'm going to continue to be super interested in all these stupid decisions that they make that like you yourself wouldn't make. Anyway, back at the town is we find out that the judge, the leader of the town, has been killing children just because they annoy him, which is crazy. He's like all these children go missing, and it's like, well, if he keeps doing this, they're not going to have a town for much longer, because children are like the next generation, you know what I mean? It's just, nothing makes sense. He's not caught until like the very end of the series, where they're like the two idiot main characters stumble into the room where he kept all like the kids' shoes for whatever fucking reason. And they're like, oh, he was terrible. He was a bad guy after all. And I'm just like, you two are idiots. You two are so fucking stupid. Anyway, Isaac has a conversation with a demon called Fly Eyes, which is, it's like an interesting conversation about being reborn and being a demon and good and evil, right? It goes nowhere. Like, it doesn't lead to anything. Like, you think there's going to be a point, and it's like, nope. That's it. There's another part where the main characters actually catch a guy carving a symbol into a house, and they just let him do it. It's so stupid. And then finally, like they decide to actually do something about what's happening to this poor town, and they decide to attack like the church, but they're like, no, let's wait until nightfall. Like, let's attack the night creatures at night. That's when they'll least suspect it. Like, it's like, fucking just go there now. Go during the day. You know shit's bad. You'll be able to see some shit. Fucking... It's like every decision is so stupid. Every decision is so stupid. Finally, like, they attack, and they find out what the runes are for. Apparently the runes are part of a spell that gathers the souls of the people in the town, like in the houses that they're carved on, and feeds them to this creature that crashed into the church, so the creature can open a doorway to hell and resurrect Dracula. And they also find out that they were going to other towns and carving symbols on their houses. So, like, you see how, like, the characters could have not been stupid, and we still could have had the climax? So the main characters could have, like, removed all the symbols from all the houses in this town, and then gone and attacked the church, and the shit still could have gone down, and they could have realized, oh, like, these guys have been visiting other towns and carving symbols on their towns, and they still, even though we were smart, like, they still got away with doing their plan. Like, that's how you keep your characters smart. And also the bad guys are smart too. And it's good and it feels good. But when the main characters are just making decisions to just ignore what fucking is happening, like, it's the climax is like disappointing. It's not cool. It's stupid. So anyway, the priest runs out of, like, the church and runs directly into the judge, like, super conveniently. The judge acts like he's gonna let him go, but then he actually, like, ends up killing him the same way he was killing those kids, by lying to him. The twins So here's a part that really annoys me, and I don't think I'm being like homophobic here, but I'm sure people would make that argument. But here's the thing: Alucard in the games, like, he's drawn by this wonderful artist, Ayami Kojima, and he's very pretty. Like, he looks like a very pretty guy. You know, he's got a lot of feminine features. He's like I think the word is bishojo or bishonen or something like that. Like, very pretty man. But he falls in love with a woman in the games, and I don't think he shows any other like attraction to anything else. Like, I think it's just like the one woman, and that's it throughout the whole series. But that's it. Now, in this story, they make the decision to make him bisexual, which I don't have anything against the character being bisexual, but I think this decision is made based on the way he was drawn. Like, oh, he's a pretty man, he must swing both ways. You know what I mean? That part bothers me. That I think the decision is made just because of the way he looks. And I don't know, it just bugs me to look at a person and decide that you have them figured out. And I'm not saying that doesn't happen in real life. Like, sometimes you can look at somebody and kind of figure out who they are. But most of the time, I feel like you can't. And I feel like people don't fall into stereotypes. And, I don't know. I just feel like the decision... like, if that's what drove the decision, or if it's like a fan art, like a fan fiction, kind of like maybe the writer was like a big fan of Alucard, and they were like, oh, wouldn't it be cool if he was like this? You know, I'm not sure if that's the best way to make decisions. But at the same time, like, representation is important, I think. And if they wanted to make him this way, I would be more okay with it if he wasn't being stupid when it was happening. Like, the twins show up and they just start having sex with him, and it's like, it's really odd. It's really out of nowhere, especially because they've had this sort of mentor-student relationship at this, like, until this point. And it's just, I don't know, it's really off-putting, and it feels really weird. So, like, if it was presented better, I would be okay with it. But, like, it's just, I don't know, it felt weird the whole time. And so then they reveal that they're actually gonna kill him out of nowhere, even though he was completely helping them. And they're just like, well, you have secrets, so we're gonna kill you. And I'm like, what? Like, what the fuck? I don't know. He kills them in kind of a cool way. Like, his sword is protects him. But the whole scene is just really weird. I feel like it makes Alucard look stupid and more vulnerable than he is. Or than he should be. Like, he's vulnerable in a way I feel like he shouldn't be vulnerable. You know? Like, if you want to show that he's vulnerable because of his loneliness, that's cool. There's ways to do it. But in this scene, it's like, oh, he's vulnerable because of his loneliness, and also because he's an idiot that completely trusted these strangers and didn't, like, have his guard up at all. Like, you know? I don't know. I just don't like the scene. And it's weird because it's like juxtaposed. Like, there's two sex scenes going on, one between Lenore and Hector, who's being manipulated. There's Alucard and these two twins. It's like a threesome. It's really weird. And then there's this fight between the other two main characters, Trevor and Cyphus, and this big demon, all like intercut between each other. And that's like the climax of like this season, and it's just really, it's like really weird, and you're like, like, I don't know, it just hit me really odd, or as being really odd, and I didn't much care for it. And then Alucard spends like the ending of the season once again just crying. But like it's different this time. It's not like this deep family like issue. It's like being taken advantage of. I don't know. This is I don't know. I just didn't enjoy the ending. The only ending I did enjoy is Isaac fights Legion, which is like a Castlevania enemy. It's like a large collection of bodies in a big orb. It's like a boss in a lot of Castlevanias, and I just thought the scene was done well. Like it's interesting how like these bodies like fight Isaac's army of demons, and it's like being controlled by a wizard. I mean, there's no like storyline weight to this encounter, which is why it's not great. You know, it's not like fantastic, but like it's just interesting visually, and it's cool to have like that other Castlevania like tidbit in there. Isaac also summons another boss, whose name I forget. He's like a huge monster to come and fight. It's cool, but yeah, that was the only really climax that I thought was at least somewhat interesting. After everything's all over, all the main characters, oh, excuse me, they just kind of like wallow in how stupid they were. Like Sypha and Trevor are like, oh, we really fucked up here. And Trevor's like, yeah, you're dumb now, just like I am. Alucard stakes the twins. And again, I'm like, I mean, I know the show Alucard is not the game Alucard, but it just doesn't seem like it was in his character to do that, especially with his, with his mom. And then that's it. Hector is easily manipulated again, and that's it. We just move on to season 3. Not a lot happens. All the characters were dumb. We move on to season 4. All the characters in season 3 are just so stupid. I think it's definitely the worst season. I think it's the least compelling because the characters all get so goofy, and I feel like they had all these characters. And then they were like, let's introduce more. And then let's also not have really any direction for them to go, like kind of thing. I think that was like the problem is they weren't able to think of anything like really interesting for all the characters to do. So Carmilla just becomes like a replacement for Dracula. And then like the main characters just go on this kind of like, there's a demon doing something weird adventure, I don't know. Yeah, season 3 definitely the worst out of all the Castlevania series seasons. But luckily, season 4 gets a little bit better, and we'll talk about that next. Alright, so Castlevania Season 4. This season starts steering us back towards... This show is pretty good. It's not amazing at this point, but it's pretty good. So starting off, Season 4 is the most visually stunning season of all of them. I imagine that this is the season where they have the most budget. The animation's really awesome. The visual style of the characters is great. Just like as a personal thing, like Alucard finally has his like Symphony of the Night cape and shield, like family crest shield, which is awesome to me. A lot of the enemies and some of the background stuff pays homage to the games, especially Symphony of the Night. So visually it's great. The music's pretty good, although there's nothing really like that stands out. Like it's good, but nothing. There's no musical moment where I'm like, oh yeah, like But it was quite well done. So it starts out with Alucard taking a piss, and there's lots of dead people in front of his castle where he's living now. So Alucard is, I guess, straight up depressed at this point, and he's It's another moment where it's like, this doesn't seem like this character where he's just like, oh, this is coming out he's like talking about the consistency of his piss and saying he's drinking too much wine instead of water. And once again, I'm like, aren't you an immortal vampire? Do you, like, if you're depressed, like, first of all, you get drunk. That's a thing you can get off of stuff besides blood. And secondly, it's like, if you're depressed, why don't you just not eat anything? You're immortal, right? Like, just don't eat anything or be sleeping in a coffin. Like, I don't know. I thought that was weird. Then we also have Lenore now in this season, and she's completely boring. My cat just burped and distracted me. So Lenore, like in the last season, it's revealed that although she's the diplomat, and although she seems kind of like an Aerith type character, where she's like sweet and kind as a vampire, she's still a vampire, and she's dangerous and manipulative and not to be trifled with at the end of season 3. In season 4, she goes back to being a sweet little dandelion. She doesn't fight. She doesn't do anything of worth. She's lost her fangs in this season, and it's depressing. And it's just disappointing. A lot of the girls squad boss group vampires, they lose their teeth in this season, and it's really disappointing because these characters were interesting and cool, some visually, some like in terms of their motivation and actions, and then they just kind of fart out, and it's super disappointing. So Carmilla like turns into what she hates, which is angry old men. Like, she's like an angry old, she's just like, I'm gonna take over the world now. It's not just like, this big piece of land. I want to conquer the whole world, and it's like unrealistic, and it's like she's very clearly doing the exact same thing that Dracula did, except more unrealistically, because Dracula just wanted to kill everybody. She wants to rule it all, and I don't know, she just turns into like a silly villain for no reason, really, and she gets stupid, and it's like, well, I thought your whole thing was that you weren't this. That's what you said your whole thing was, although you really never demonstrated that, but whatever. So now it's just solidified, and she's lame. Also, Morana and Strega are off like doing their own thing, and they have like a conversation. And although they were like totally on board in the last season, now they're like, oh, Carmilla's stupid. Like, they have a conversation about like Carmilla being an ass. It's like, well, why didn't you say something? Why did you just go along? And then when you were in private before, you were also like, yeah, this is a good plan. And now you're like, no, this is dumb. Like, I don't know. It's very weird. Also, while they're having this conversation, what do you call? Like, Morana's getting a foot rub from Striga, and it's like, once again, like, aren't you vampires? Do vampires' feet get sore? Does that happen? Like you need a foot rub? Like, if it's just like a romantic thing, like where they want to be like touching each other, like, that's fine. But like, you have blisters on your feet? Like, you're a vampire. Like, what are the benefits of being a vampire? Like, this is like, you're just a person? That's it? Like, I don't know. It drove me nuts. I'm like, what's with the foot rub? Like, they're trying to show that these two are in a relationship and they're close, but like, there's other ways to do that without like it being odd and raising questions about like vampires having sore feet. Then there's this scene where Striga, their camp is attacked. These two are together. Their camp is attacked. They're going out into the countryside and they're conquering land, and they get attacked by, it's just the local townspeople apparently, or the local farmers have gotten a militia together and they're attacking them. So they attack during the day, so they know that they're vampires, and Striga like hides Morana, and she puts on this armor, and she's like, "Oh, this is day armor," and it's like, "Oh, cool. This is going to be set up for later on, right?" And there's this scene where she's like, it's really well animated, and she's slaughtering these farmers, right? And the day armor looks cool. It's very reminiscent of Berserk. She uses a very Berserk weapon. It's cool. It's great. Do the troops have any day armor? Like do the vampire? Do you think maybe it would be cool that your troops also have like this armor that makes them able to fight during the day? That would be awesome. That would be a good use of resources. Maybe it's because it seems like they don't, right? And then after this scene, like she comes back and she's like, "Oh, I just slaughtered a bunch of farmers," and she feels like regret because she's like a warrior, and this was not like a battle. This was more like a slaughter. It's just these people were like trying to defend their land, and she's like, "Oh, this is gonna keep happening if we do this." And I'm just like, you guys are supposed to be hundreds of years old. Of course this is what it's gonna be like. Like, you didn't know that? You know? Like you have to think about what your character's point of view would be. Like, if they're 500 years old, they have to be more wise than I am. They like, or, you know, like, they have to realize that this was what is in store. Like, you could have her coming back and just being blood drunk and being like, yeah, like, I love the battle, I love the blood, like, the taste of a fresh kill is great, and then keep going on. But for her to realize something that any person would realize within their 100-year, if they're lucky, lifespan, when she's 500 or whatever she is, I don't know, it just throws me off. And she's like, "Oh, this is a bad idea, and we got to go against Carmilla." I don't know. I don't know. Maybe there's different writers between the seasons. Maybe that's why things don't seem to make sense, and the characters keep like changing around. But that's a problem. You know, that's a whoopsie daisy. So in this season, Saint Germain is back, and he is kind of more of a main character this time. Like, the last season does focus on him a lot, but he's searching for his girlfriend who got stuck in this alternate dimension called the Infinite Corridor, and that's his motivation, is he's searching for her. So she's not a character. Like, you get to see her here, but you don't get to hear her utter a word. Like, there's flashbacks, she's there, you see she smiles a lot, you see she's pretty, but she doesn't have a personality. You don't hear anything she says. She likes him, and it's like, well, why does she like this? Obviously, like he's like a scummy kind of guy, Saint Germain. Like, you got to feel like he's like a cowardly, like, does what's good for him kind of character. And it's like, well, why did she fall in love with him? Did he fool her? Like, was he conning her? Or was there actually something there? And you don't really get to see it. So Alucard gets like a letter asking for help. So like this town and close enough to his castle is being attacked by night creatures, and they send a messenger to ask for help from him. And he goes and helps them, which is in line with his character, right? From the games. But this Alucard, he's got, like, in the anime, or whatever you want to call this, the Netflix adaptation, Alucard has been burnt a lot, and he's pulled himself away from people. I feel like this Alucard wouldn't go help them. Like, the last two people he tried to help turned on him and like took advantage of him and left him feeling broken, I thought. Like, you know, he ended the last season crying, and then like the first people who asked for help, he's like, yeah, okay. It's very weird. Like it's almost like, I don't know, this season doesn't understand what happened last season. Like I like Alucard's character in this season better because he's a little less stupid. And he looks like he does in the games, but it doesn't connect with what happened last season. It's just weird. So back to Lenore and Hector, like they're apparently in love, like legit in love in this season, even though she's been using him and manipulating him. Like Hector is such a terrible character. Like he's such a wimp. He's just like, yeah, I guess I'll do whatever you want, and like he is resisting, sort of. Like he's placing these little like magical spells around the castle, and he's making his own kind of plans to rebel or to at least cause the downfall of Carmilla. But he also actually loves Lenore instead of hates her for using him and tricking him and manipulating him. It's really fucking weird. And she seems to love him too. And it's just like, what the fuck is going on? Like what? like I thought you hated her. I thought she was using you. And this is like, okay? Like, I don't know. It's just very, I don't know. Like Hector and Isaac, like they start off kind of interesting, like their characters, but as the seasons go on, they're just less and less interesting. Hector becomes just like, wow, really? Like you're just lame, and you don't really do anything. You don't grow really. Isaac is a little bit better. In this season, he's actually going to go for revenge. And destroy Carmilla and the girl squad. He attacks the castle with his huge group of demons, but he has a conversation with Hector, which is actually kind of not bad, you know, like they talk about what went on, and Isaac forgives Hector for being a dope, and then he leaves Lenore alone at Hector's request. And Hector gives him the means to go and attack Carmilla, who just actually, like, the fight's cool, but I expected Carmilla to put up more of a fight. I expected there to be some hint of her, like in the Castlevania games, Carmilla's just this face with like I think like a bloody tear, and she kind of moves around. I thought there would be some kind of homage to that. Like she has this really like desperate fight. She kicks a lot of ass. Isaac starts winning, and you think she's gonna do something. Like you think she's gonna do something cool. Like she's gonna transform into this big demon or show her true form. You think she's gonna like win, like because the fight's going so not in her favor. And then she just gives up, and I think she kills herself actually, because she knows like that'll bring the castle down, and it creates like an explosion. And it's like, that's so lame. Like she just gives up, and then the rest of the girl squad gives up. Like Striga and Morana just leave. They're like, oh, Carmilla's dead, so Lenore must be dead. Let's leave. Like they don't get revenge for their sisters. They don't like. At least Striga should be like, all right, you're not a warrior, Morana, but I have like this code of honor. Be quiet, phone. I have this code of honor that forces me to like try to get revenge or try to like attack. You know, like I have to do this. It's just who I am. Like that could have been a thing, but she's like, no, let's leave. Like let's go north. Fuck it. I don't know. I thought they were gonna do so much more with these characters, and they're just lame. And then the day armor, which seems like it's a setup for a future scene, is not. That's it. She killed farmers with it. Isn't that cool? Berserk homage lady. It just gives up, and I'm just like, wow. Then there's two more characters that are introduced. There's Comrade Vampire, who's a fucking idiot. And then there's, what the hell is his name? Varney. Varney, his vampire friend. And Varney's very, like, boisterous and very, like, self-centered and, like, pay attention to me. Like, that kind of vampire. But he's actually pretty good. he's actually Death in disguise, which is kind of cool because Death is a classic Castlevania villain, and he's trying to bring Dracula back with the help of this other vampire. This other vampire can't stand him, and that's actually kind of interesting. Their dynamic. I don't like Comrade Vampire. I think he's another like, oh, look, we're being really deep with this guy's dialogue, or we're taking a real close look at what a warrior feels like and what wars are like, and it's like, no, this is all nonsense crap. This is like watching a war movie and then being like, I know what war is like that kind of thing. Yeah, so that's that. Also, I forgot to talk about our main characters. Sypha and Trevor are, at the beginning of this show, they're having like repeats of season 3 where they keep fighting demons and vampires who are trying to resurrect Dracula. And it's actually kind of interesting. Like, their banter is pretty decent. They're fighting flea men, which is a funny scene. And they're just getting frustrated at having to do this over and over again. The action in these scenes is animated so well. I have no problem with any of like the visuals in this show at all. Like, they're all fantastic. Everybody did a fantastic job with the animation, the character designs. Everything you look at in the show is great. There's some things where it's like, oh, we didn't have the budget, but that's not the creator's fault. It's just the way these things work. So I can't fault them for that kind of thing. But it's good. It's pretty decent. Finally, they end up in this town where it's Targovishta, and there are people living underground who, like, the rich people are living underground, the poor people are on top in this ruined city, and there's nothing being rebuilt, and Sypha and Trevor are getting frustrated because, like, no one's leading the people. Sypha, starts taking over that, and Trevor just starts collecting things. Like, he starts picking up items off of random, like, dead people, which I don't know how to feel about it, because he's not explaining what he's doing. He's just kind of like, oh, look at this. Like, it's very video gamey, which I kind of like about it, because it's like, oh, you killed this guy, you get this item. So he's doing that, and he seems to be like, they seem to be connected in some way, and it's like, all right, cool, I guess, but like, it's not explained, and it's just something that's happening. It doesn't feel like it belongs. Like, maybe it's like a nod to the way video games work, but anyway. So that goes on for a little while. They end up under the city in the catacombs with the rich people, and there's a crazy person who has the I guess the king and queen, or at least the tip top royals are in a little throne room, and Sypha and Trevor go in there, and then they're dead. And it's like, this person's nuts. Trevor picks up the cross weapon, from the Castlevainia, the cross that you throw. And he kind of explains that, like, crosses actually, they're not holy objects. It's just vampires get freaked out if you put, like, a symmetrical geometric shape in front of their face. And I'm like, fucking no, don't. Just let religion have some sort of magic in this universe. Because holy water works. Holy water does stuff to vampire. It kills them. We've seen it. So just let there be power in religious items. Let there be a magic good. Like, this is, like, there maybe is a series that you can make where a vampire looks at a cross and he's like, I don't care. Like, would you even think that would bother me? Like, that's certainly a fine series to make, but it's not this series. It's not Castlevania, because there's so much, like, magical holy stuff, So I didn't like that. What's Saint Germain's in this season a lot. He's very clearly evil. I think he was clearly evil in the last season, but people kind of ignore it. And this season, he's again like he's maybe not evil, but he's at least not trustworthy. It's like he's at least somebody you have to keep your eye on, and no one keeps their fucking eyes on him. Like the way he dresses, the way he talks, the way he acts. It's like this guy's suspicious. Like if I was in this world and I saw him and I listened to what he said, I'd be like, I'm gonna keep an eye on you. You seem kind of selfish, and you seem very obsessed about this one lady, and you seem like kind of like that you're gonna stop at nothing to do this, even if it costs other people death. You don't seem to really care that people are dying around you. I'm gonna keep my eye on you, and I'm gonna hit you in the head with a rock if if I think you're gonna do something stupid. And no one does. This time it's Alucard who's just like, yeah, I'm sure this guy's fine. Instead of Sypha and Trevor. So that's another instance of the main character being dumb. So anyway, I guess back to Alucard. Like he meets up with this town, and he's like, he helps out, meets a lady that he fancies. She's a cool character. She's strong and she's a leader, and she's trying to protect her people. She's got a few lines where it's like, you're a little nuts, but whatever, it's fine. They decide that they're going to take people back to Alucard's castle to protect them. So they escort them through the woods at night once again. And the excuse is like, oh, the night creatures will never expect us to move through the forest at night. And I'm just like, are you... Like, daytime explodes vampires. Do this shit during the day. What the fuck is with this shit like, oh, we have to do it at night? It's so stupid, like it hurts. Anyway. Everybody's dumb. Once again, there's no Grant. I thought he was going to be like in this village or some shit like that. He's just not here. I don't have a big, I don't care about Grant, but like, I thought it'd be nice for the people who played Castlevania 3 and enjoyed it to have that character in there. So one of the themes, or one of the things that Saint Germain is trying to do is he's trying to complete alchemy, which is apparently this thing called, I forget what it's called. He's trying to make like this he's trying to make this perfect being, which is apparently a creature with a hermaphrodite body, male and female, and he gets talked into pulling Dracula and his wife's soul into this body together. So I guess it has two souls, and it's not just like male and female body together in one being. It's male and female body with the two beings stuck together in it. Which is, I mean, it sounds like it would be terrible for the ultimate living being, but whatever. But that's his goal. And he's going to do it with the help of some vampires, namely Varney and Comrade Vampire. So that's what he's trying to do. He also feels like it'll make him more powerful if he does this, and then he'll be able to reunite with his girlfriend. There's a scene where he's like putting the plan into action, which is very dumb. Alright, let's talk about this. So there's a lot to talk about in this scene. So the vampires, they start getting the stuff together. They build the hermaphrodite body from corpses. They sew together, and they're chasing Alucard and these people back to the castle. Alucard has all the people outside of the castle to defend the castle from the outside, which is insane to me. I don't know, it just doesn't make any sense. I would think he would defend the castle from the inside, maybe shoot from the windows, maybe have Alucard be outside because he can move very fast and he's a magic vampire. And then have all the soft, squishy people inside, maybe barring the doors or at least funneling people in so that you can fight them. Like the scene is cool, but like it's like a Game of Thrones where it's like the decisions they make don't make sense for what they're trying to do, like where they're trying to protect the people. And once again, like Saint Germain not being watched is like setting up the system where like all the people who die in this battle, their souls will be funneled in order to open a gateway to summon Dracula and his wife. And I don't know. It's like, well, yeah, you should have paid attention to this guy. He doesn't care about like what's happening to these people, and he wouldn't have gotten away with it if you just had if any one person had just been like, hey, this is not great. It's like the characters are stupid so that this things can happen like the way, I don't know. Like you could see their souls being absorbed and sent into the castle. Like people die and their soul comes out and goes into the castle and it lights up and you can see it because the characters see them later on. But like while it's happening, they don't notice it. I don't know. It just drove me nuts. Alucard is dumb. Like he starts noticing this is happening. He doesn't do anything about it. I don't know. It's just silly. There's a scene before where he's like playing with kids, and that's kind of cool because it's like he's a kid himself in a way, and he's kind of like a hero to them. Like he protected them through the forest that he made a terrible decision to go through at night. But it's like a human moment, and it's like, oh, he's getting used to people again, which I don't know. Like, it's a nice little scene, but I feel like it could have been handled a little bit better. So Saint Germain is opening this portal, and he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna become a god. I'm gonna complete alchemy." And he's like, "Oh, I'm gonna be able to have sex again." And it's like, fucking, it's like another joke where it's like, no, come on, don't. Let's make the character serious. Let's make, like that's it. Like you're doing this to get your dick wet. Like that's your motivation. Like it's not like, oh, I miss my compatriot. I'll do anything for my soulmate. It's like, oh, I'm gonna bone. So yeah, so Varney is revealed as being Death, and he reveals that this is his plan. He's going to trap Dracula and his wife in this body. That will drive Dracula mad, and Dracula will continue his genocide. I think that's kind of cool. I think just the way it plays out is not great. But Varney being Death is very cool. Death has a lot of, like, he's vulgar, like he's needlessly vulgar. Like, why would Death say the fuck word, right? But like, you're starting to get used to it at this point, and you're just like, all right, everybody talks like this in this universe, and he's like threatening, and his plan is like he wants more death, but it's also like he can't do this himself, like he's restrained, and it's like, oh, I guess that's just convenient for the story that Death can't do this. He's like Death himself can't open a door to hell, and it's like, why? He can open a door to the infinite, like what's it called, this other realm, the infinite corridor. He can open the doors there and open all those doors, but he can't go to hell. Like that doesn't make any sense. Like you think Death would be sending people to hell, and then they explain that he's not actually Death itself. He's like a spirit that took the name on, and it's like, just make him Death, and make Death selfish and not give a shit about people. Anyway, there's like a, I don't know. So like the final attack on the castle is really cool. It's well animated. The characters get reunited. Alucard, Sypha, and Trevor. Once again, Sypha is amazing and doesn't seem to be in danger at all ever, except for like one little moment where all the characters are like beaten, sort of. But then they like they're fighting characters who are strong against them. like it's like if Rock was fighting Paper, Scissors was fighting Rock, and Paper was fighting Scissors, and then they decide to switch like who they're fighting, and then they win. So it's like that one moment, and that was pretty cool. The animation in this scene is very cool. Alucard does a lot of Symphony of the Night stuff, is really cool. Trevor does some cool stuff with the whips, hunting down creatures. Sypha's just like the final attack on the castle looks awesome. There's another enemy that's an homage to the Castlevainia games, which is this weird penisy T-Rex. Which it's cool. It's like a T-Rex with a foreskin face, but whatever. It is from the games, and it's a cool enemy. Then there's some vampires that are unique to this series, and their fight is really cool. There's like a boss vampire who watches them fight and doesn't join in. Where I'm like, this is like, why wouldn't he just? If he had, because the main characters have so much trouble fighting him, it's like, well, if you fought them with your other vampire friends, you would have won. Why didn't you do that? But anyway, silliness aside, like, it is a great scene. The fight scenes are awesome. There's one scene where, like, they mentioned that death can't kill, like Death couldn't kill all those people. Like Death wants to bring Dracula back so he can kill, so he can genocide people, and Death can feed off the Death. And it's like, dude, you're Death, why don't you kill all these people, right? And he's like, well, I can't do the killing, I just kind of absorb, I feed off the death that happens. And I'm like, all right, fine. But then in the next scene, he's killing people. Like, he tries to kill Trevor, and like, he turns into like a giant kaiju of death. Like, it's a giant monster with a huge scythe, and it's like, really, man? Like, you were having trouble killing people? You seem like you'd be like exquisitely good at it with your invincibility and your hugeness and your giant scythe. It feels like you would have no problem doing all the killing of the people yourself. It's another scene where it's like, we just had them say things that we thought were cool, and we didn't think of what the things meant that they said, and we didn't put them together. So it's stupid, but it's visually cool, and it's fun to watch, even though your brain's like, ugh. Like this doesn't work. I can't kill anybody. I'm gonna kill you, and I'm gonna kill your girlfriend, and I'm gonna shit her out, like shit out her soul. It's like, oh, come on, man. So Trevor fights Death, and he puts together the MacGuffin sword, which is a sword made from all those little things that he's been like finding throughout the season. And that just kills Death. That is the sword that kills him, obviously. And it's like, did Trevor know he was going to need this? Does this just specifically kill Death, or does it kill, like, giant gods? Is that what this is for? It's very convenient that he found that with no explanation as to why it was around. It just was. I don't know. Like, I'm so torn, because it is, like, it's a fun fight to watch. It looks great, but it's like the MacGuffin sword kills Death. Like it's like the rule of cool, but it's not quite cool enough for the rule of cool to work. Yeah. So anyway, it's better than last season. It's not perfect. And then we go back to Hector and Lenore. They're in love, but Lenore is depressed because her squad is broken up and she's trapped in the castle. So she kills herself. Like, it's so disappointing. Like, she was cool at the end of the last season. Like, I thought the storyline was a little stupid with Hector and her, but she at least was threatening. And now she's just like, oh, I won't live in a cage. I will jump. Like, you know, it's that kind of thing. She actually just walks into the sunlight, but like, you know, it's lame. And she just gives up like the rest of the other girls did. And it's like, it makes them weaker and lamer. And that's it. That's the finale. Like, it looked cool, but storyline, like writing wise, it's not great, and it just bugs me. It could have been better. Alucard decides to build a village around the castle with all his new friends. That part is cool, I guess. Sypha is pregnant with another Belmont, and in the last moments of the fight, Saint Germain, who died during the fight, was able to save Trevor, was able to transport him somewhere else to save his life, and Trevor returns, and it's happy ever after for our Castlevania people. Alucard's got a girlfriend now, seems happy, he's got people to look out for. I mean, you know, it's a happy ending. So all in all, this season, like, it's better than season 3. It's not as good as season 2, I don't think. Or season 1 is the best one because it's short, sweet, to the point. They don't waste time with silly things. The characters don't really do too much silly stuff. There's some bad dialogue in season 1, but it's not, you know, it's not like as bad as it gets. So that's it. So I gave my general ideas at the beginning of this video. I guess at the end I would say the show's got a lot of flaws, but you can watch it and enjoy it. If you like vampire stuff, it's decent. It's not the best. It's fun to watch. It's fun to look at. It's good. Like for a video game adaptation, it's pretty good. It's not, you know, could have been a lot better. It's got a lot of like issues that it needs to shore up. If you're a person who like little things bugs you and annoys you, which I typically am, but like I could find stuff to enjoy in this. Like I'm used to like video game adaptations being like the Super Mario Brothers movie, or I don't know what's another example. Like most the Mortal Kombat movie, you know, like the Mortal Kombat movie was abysmal. like the newer one, the 2020 or 2021 version of the Mortal Kombat movie was awful. This is much better than that. Like, they were trying with this. Mortal Kombat, they were just like, this thing happens now. Shut up. Don't think about it. Like, you know. So it's much better than that. It is, like, it's entertaining to watch. So that's it. That's my talk about Castlevania. Could have been a lot better. Apparently there's more coming with different characters, so that's interesting. This person who created this is apparently also doing a Devil May Cry series on Netflix. I don't know if that's going to be good, but I don't see Devil May Cry being great without the gameplay part. Because Devil May Cry, story-wise, has got like some issues, and I'd love to talk about them later. All in all, give the series a watch if you want. It's fun. Alright, I'm going to stop repeating myself and just kind of end this here. Thanks for listening. I appreciate it, especially if you watch this whole video, because I know it's really long. But it's all the seasons of Castlevania. And seriously, anybody who watches this channel and listens, thanks. The channel's not what I expected it to be. I'm trying to work more on it being like more talking about things, more taking a look at things, more not just gameplay and talking over video games, but like talking about not just media but life and the weirdness of it and the interestingness of it. So I'm going to work more on doing that. But for now, let's end this here because it's already been way too much of just me talking to myself. So goodbye, everybody. Have a great day. Later.